tiny bit about our company. As I mentioned, I'm Andy Carr. Jeff Foyer is our president. He works out of Los Angeles, and Aaron Broom, who started the webinar here, he is our VP of Business Development. Been in the insurance industry for a long time, and dealing with leads, in particular, internet leads, for quite a long time. And all put together, each of us has had about 20 years of experience, almost embarrassing at this stage, in order to when you think about how young the internet lead space, and particularly warm transfers, actually is. So as I was saying, also please feel free to put in messages in the chat window, and we will take care of answering those at the end of the presentation. We expect to be talking for maybe 40 minutes, and then take questions for as long as you guys have them. So we have to have had some clients in order to have been around this long, and the number is over 300 at this point. And in the warm transfer world, we're actually the largest player in the space of internet transfers, insurance internet warm transfers. Over 3 million, and coming up on 4 million here very shortly, within the next couple of months. A couple of hundred seats devoted to it, and it's a big and growing part of our business, and one that we're very excited to tell you more about and help you do a better job with as well. So, looking back historically, and what's driven the market is the next item.
Yeah, traditionally, we're all used to, or what used to be traditional marketing generated traditional results. Whether it was good or not, you kind of knew what you expected. And I think I don't want to rehash the advent of the internet lead space, but I think there are some important things in there that have really tipped the marketplace. And the fact that consumers are going online more and more, it doesn't surprise anyone at this point. But it might be the fact that the folks who work in that space generating those leads have done a much better job optimizing their revenue than what the buyers, the folks who sell, whether it's auto insurance or home mortgages or EDU leads, have done a much better job optimizing the dollars. They figured it out. I think a lot of people saw it was a race for volume and a race for traffic. It was also a race for how could they sell it more and optimize it at best. I think the classic example, take a renter's insurance policy that probably has a value of about $14 to the person who sells it, so maybe enough to pay the gas to go into work, was sold up to 5-6 times for $7 or $8. The sellers made their money on it, and the carriers were not. So the reason we're on the phone is the fact that it's time for change, and the technology is in place. The companies are coming around to learning how to do it, and we can actually shift it back where the sellers on the platform and in the space can actually make a better cost acquisition and a better return. So why it matters, we all know. We're all here for revenue. Everyone needs to maximize their revenue, but very few have figured out how to really track costs. So when I talk about costs, I don't just mean you pay X for a lead, for $25 for a mortgage lead, but what's the cost of that person in the seat doing it and their supervisor? So revenue matters, the sources matter, improving your process matters, and we'll talk a little more about that. This just doesn't have to be about new leads. This can be after you've quoted someone or someone who's an existing customer. Cost controls, we're really at the dawn of an age of getting better at source evaluation, optimizing our expensive staff, and continually getting that market feedback so that we can improve. And finally, something we touch on that a lot of companies do not is employee satisfaction. This isn't about you being beholden to your sales force or your sales force being beholden to you. This is about having the system in place where people can succeed, and good salespeople want to take that next call and generate more revenue for the company. And when you really knock all three parameters out of the park, these are the companies we see in the top 5 to 10% of performance in the marketplace. So we all kind of ask ourselves, this can't be that hard to do, right? The reality is it often fails, and it fails because companies don't ask the questions This is only a subset of the questions we would want you to ask in doing a program. It is, unfortunately, more complicated. It takes a fair bit of work to figure out who you want to call these leads, how you're going to manage them. Are you going to coach them? Do you have a system to listen to their calls? What's the strategy? Who are you going to buy leads from? Are they even from your own website? And how hard are you pushing these to become buyers? It's very challenging when you get to operations. And these are the things we'll work through on the next few slides. But telephony routing, management, internal queues to transfer to, and compensation packages. All this affects whether or not you can be successful. And we have seen this fail with the best technology. We have seen this fail with very good people. You need that really good mix of sales folks, management, coaching, and compensation in place to effectively do it right. So we'll turn it back over here now and start to dive into some of the technology behind this.
All right. When you look at this page, and I hope you guys are taking careful notes. There may be a quiz later to see if you can remember all the little symbols and connections that are involved in setting up putting a warm transfer process into the middle of your lead management. And although there's a whole lot of little boxes there, and different databases and transfers and information flow, one thing I can tell you to a dead certainty is that every one of these can break, because in our experience in 10 years, we've had them all break. Obviously we've gotten better over time, but there are a lot of little pieces here that really matter, and frankly, don't play well together unless you're very, very careful with them. I'm going to call everybody's attention to the top bubble here. This says double telephony costs, and that applies to cloud solutions. There's a lot of advantages to cloud solutions. You don't have to buy the equipment, and other people maintain it, and so on. So a lot of folks look at cloud solutions for CRM. They look at cloud solutions for dialers as well. And one thing to keep in mind when you have a cloud solution in telephony is that you inherently have 2 hops per phone call. So if you're dialing out to a prospect, it first goes to the cloud, and then from the cloud down to the person. That's 2 separate connections, and in almost all cases, you pay the per minute costs 2 times. And if you add a transfer to that, the transfer is also going to have 2 times. So you can be paying typically 4x your regular telephony cost during the process of a transfer. That may still all be worthwhile, but it's something that not everybody considers when they're figuring out how to make this. They're figuring out what technology is going to make most sense for them. And I want to tell you guys a quick story about Avaya and about solutions in general that are not designed from the ground up to do the warm transfer business that we're talking to you guys about today. Avaya is a great company. Part of the reason they're a great company is that they have rock-solid inbound call systems. We're all familiar with them. They never go down. They're great. And Avaya also is provides solutions in the outbound dialer world. And one of our clients is employing Avaya to do, in having us use Avaya for various reasons in a warm transfer solution. And the fact is, it wasn't designed for this from the ground up. So guess what? Some of the little symbols here are breaking, and they've been breaking for 5 months in a row. Productivity is half what it is on the dialer system that we have that's built from the ground up for this, and we constantly have at least 5 or 6 tickets, service tickets open for them. And again, it just, it's not that Avaya is bad, it's just that it wasn't designed for this in the first place. So one of the other considerations that is very, very important for, I think, probably everybody on the call is to make sure that we're in 100% legal compliance. We have 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the federal government employed to make sure that they're all creating regulations at a breakneck pace, and especially regulations that affect our business. And if you step out of line on any of these things, we all know we can be in for big trouble, a big hassle as well as an expense. For everybody on the call who deals with inbound calls, there's really not much to do for compliance because the customer chose to call you. When it's outbound, all of a sudden everybody wants to tell you what to do and how to do and when you can and when you can't do it. One little note here is that in October of last year, the government came up with a new set of rules called the TCPA rules that affected outbound dialing, and especially things that are done with predictive dialers. And because they want to make sure that lawyers are fully employed, and they're real concerned about that, they didn't even define clearly what a predictive dialer was. And as a result, there's been millions of dollars spent, hundreds of thousands among our clients, to try to make sure that they're in compliance with the rules that are not even clear. And one of the other little notes here about calling hours that I want to bring out to folks, just to give an illustration of the level of complexity that we all have to pay attention to if you're going to be in this business. So every state sets up rules for when you can call and when you can't call by day of the week. You can call till 7 p.m. on regular days, or you can call till 9 p.m. on weekdays, but only till 5 p.m. on Sundays, for instance. And that is going to vary not by area code, which phone numbers are portable now, so area codes don't work, but by zip code. And then in addition, of course, some parts of some states don't have the same, aren't even in the same time zone. They do or do not use daylight savings time. And in a dialer, in an efficient dialer anyway, one of the things that happens is that the calls to be dialed are put into what's called a hopper. Everything's cleared out, they're ready, and the dialer is going to hit those things in order. And there's maybe 50 or 100 leads sitting in this hopper for several minutes sometimes before they're actually dialed. But they're all the decks are cleared for them to go. Well, if something's perfectly ready to be dialed and it's sitting in the hopper, but then it's a minute later and now you're past the dialing rule for that particular zip code, you can be in trouble. If you happen to be dialing a lawyer who sues for recreational purposes, calling a minute late is a potential problem. It can cause you untold issues. So a lot of things to be careful for if you're going to be involved in doing warm transfers, to make sure you're not stepping on the wrong side of the rules.
So after we finish trying to scare everyone, we can talk about how it can be made easier. I think I really want to hit on, I believe we have reached a tipping point in the marketplace, and certainly when I opened, it wasn't to be negative to the lead source companies. They've just done a good job doing what they're there to do and providing leads. But I think we really have hit that point where it's possible for the buyers in the world and the folks who actually have to sell their product to generate revenue to balance it out. And I look at companies like LeadCloud and Moss and LeadAmp out there who can give you an opportunity to have one point of entry technologically and partner with multiple providers. So they can map to your requirements to send you a lead, and they can partner with you to take any source imaginable for your product. And then you have companies like LeadID who can tell you how long that consumer was online and whether or not you should buy it before you bought it. So there is some incredible complexity made simple by companies now who can help, and it opens up what you can do from a funnel perspective. So what I mean here, the inverted funnel, some companies have a history of working through prospect criteria. You can partner with an eBureau or Targus and reject leads where, a credit, a certain history of that consumer based on what they filled out in the lead data and how that targets to your book doesn't make it applicable, so you reject it. Well, there's many more levels now that you can tie all into that. Lead criteria, the age of the lead. Has it already been sent to me 28.5 days ago? And scoring, looking at your book, looking at the performance of what closes for you, and weighting leads differently so that you prioritize appropriately. Then you can go to source. I think if you asked any of your reps, is a lead from your own website better than one you bought elsewhere? And most of the time they'll say absolutely. However, they don't know what you paid to generate that lead and what you're paying across all your other different sources for leads, what the contact rate is, the transfer rate, conversion rate. So there's a significant level of subsourcing you can do in the world of prioritizing your leads as well. Then take that one step further, and your call results, what that can reveal about the quality of the lead and what's actually transferring in to be a sales opportunity. And then, of course, ultimately the sales results to give you this complete and closed-loop ecosystem where you're getting great cost of acquisition results across the board. And now, imagine one more thing. Imagine many of you run call center shops out there. What often happens is as you get busy, which is a great result, and then you've got lots of the phones are ringing, let's say you have a situation where you're only saving them X dollars while your rep's on the phone and they see the lights flashing with the next call. They'll just dump it and move on to the next one if the consumer's not laying down easy to purchase. In this case, why don't you take exactly what we just described and apply it to a follow-up strategy? And now just not on new quotes, but on all your other quotes and follow-up to sell, you can really maximize each at-bat you have to optimize your sales funnel.
All right, so back to some real specific things that ought to be part of any kind of warm transfer process to maximize your results. And first, almost everybody on the call knows and has heard and seen statistics about how quickly, how speed to dial really matters. If you get a hold of a lead faster, you're more likely to reach them, and they're more likely to be willing to engage with you. And we hear people talk about trying to get the lead dialed within 10 minutes or 5 minutes. In fact, if you dial within 1 minute, it makes a huge difference compared to even 2 or 3 minutes. A 25% difference is in our statistics. It's absolutely huge. Another thing that you can do is to make sure that the number that appears to the prospect when you're dialing them, your caller ID that they see, is going to be a local area code for them. If you're showing them a toll-free number, or you're showing them a number from across the country, they're just 5% less likely to pick up the phone, and that means you're 5% less likely to to have a conversation, a transfer, and a sale. And when we talk about 25% and 5%, the cost of warm transfers in the total picture is really a small percentage. What you spend on your salespeople is a lot more. What you spend on the leads is a lot more. But these kinds of things, these 5 and 25%, don't just apply to the warm transfer cost. They apply to everything. You get 5% more of your leads, of the value out of your leads, and 5% more value out of the leads of your salespeople. So these kinds of differences make a huge difference in the bottom line. Another thing is we call phone number flipping, is that some of your leads are going to have 2 unique phone numbers. And if you don't reach them on the first phone number, you want an automated way of having using the second number for your redial. And as it's probably apparent by now, is just from these 3 items, there's no way a human being can do these things. Unless you have people who are dedicated to this and you have a machine that is doing the dialing, you cannot get to the kinds of quickness. You can't do phone number flipping. You can't do any of these things. And if you don't have a machine, remember some of your competitors will. They'll talk to the person first. 60% of the time, the first person to talk to them is the one that makes the sale. Next, a lot of the times, people have agreements with aggregators where they'll say, send me 60 leads an hour or something like that. And that's fine. And what the aggregators do is that they find the leads that meet your criteria and they start sending them to you. And when they reach 60, they stop sending for that hour. So you can easily wind up with 60 leads in 15 minutes and then get no leads for 45. Well, this blows up your staffing levels on the warm transfer side, and you wind up either spending more money than you should to staff to handle that initial surge, or you don't handle them properly. Winds up having a very deleterious impact on your overall performance. Next, in hours versus out of hours. In-hour leads are dramatically more productive because obviously those are the ones where you can dial quickly, and off hours you don't have the choice. But a lot of times, especially with for aggregators, you might get a lower price on off-hour leads, and for your own website, if the leads are coming from there, you've got them anyway, and you want to dial them. And even if the performance is 2 to 4 times less from a transfer perspective, they still could wind up being very, very cost-effective for you overall in terms of generating sales. Next, you want to make sure that as you're dialing people, you're going to reach a lot of answering machines. In fact, half your dials are ring no answers, and another 20% or so are going to be answering machines. And you want to leave a message. Not everybody does this, but it's because it takes time. But you do want to do it because you're going to be able to increase your transfer performance by 10% by doing that. Next, the last point I want to talk about here really is real exciting, and that's that your inbound folks are always going to be, if you're properly staffed overall on the inbound side, that means that you're going to have times when they're real busy and times when they're not so busy. And the transfers are going to happen as they happen, and you want to, in the times that your inbound folks are real busy, you're still going to take some of the transfers, and you want them to be the most valuable ones. So if you have scored your leads or categorized your leads along the lines that Aaron was talking about earlier, you can have two different transfer to numbers, a high priority and a low in your phone system, so that when you're busy, you only get the leads that are most likely to close and that are most valuable to you. So you have when you do all these things together, along with the other things that Aaron is talking about, we have an option now. We as a company and we as an industry have an option to really change the game for getting the most money out of leads and out of warm transfers.
So I think we'll transition here into how. What are the different ways we can make this work? How can we effectively launch a program or modify what we're doing today? As a starting point, the most common way companies dive into this is to leverage the existing salespeople they already trust. They've given them good sales results. We want to try a new lead source. We'll have them dial the leads. Unfortunately, it's the least popular option with your sales staff, but it's for legitimate reasons. Dialing is challenging. Over 70% of the dials on a lead will lead to not talking to anyone. That's very discouraging towards a salesperson, and feedback is always emotional, not data-driven when it's this arena with your sales staff. An example I had, I was at an insurance company's national event, and they had the five top-selling agencies up on the stage talking about what made them the 5 top-selling agencies. And Agent 1 says, I buy leads, it's grown my business. Agent 2 says, leads are terrible. I do pizza box tops. Agent 3 says pizza box tops are ridiculous. I do the Chamber of Commerce and the local church, and you get the idea. All 5 guys they're all successful, but they all had very emotionally driven responses to what works and what doesn't, without enough data behind it. So imagine if the guy running a company feels that way, what tools the staff don't have to be able to have the right feedback given back to their management team. And then the other challenge for the salespeople is, do they have a dialing system? Do they have a CRM platform? Are you able to give them the leverage to know how many times they dialed and what the results were from each dial? Other problems are, what's success? Now, if they're used to selling and taking phone calls and now they're dialing out and talking to no one, does this affect their compensation plan? And, the classic case, what happens now is it's a medical term called prairie dogging. And your salesperson's neck grows about 1.5 feet as their head pops over the cube to tell everyone about how bad that lead source is. And no matter how good the lead source is, you're dead in the water when the sales team gets to that point. So it's really challenging to have your sales folks manage these calls. And it's not the best lever of their time when you consider they're expensive and you've hired them and pay them to sell. So, all right, fine. If that's not going to work, what else can you do? Well, you can hire the people. You can hire non-professional, non-licensed. When I say professional, I mean licensing or appointments, depending on if you have certain requirements for the product you sell. You hire inexpensive people, $8 to $12 an hour, depending where you are, and you have them come in to do the dials for you. The same challenges apply, from technology, from having to have systems to having the right tools in place to enable them to dial faster. But there's other challenges. you're hiring a different skill set. Your HR team, if you have one, or your sales manager, if they're required to do this, they have to look for different skills in the person. And they're typically a different cultural fit. You have to get used to, as I like to say, at this pay range, you get used to people in the office now with body piercings and tattoos like you never had before. And that's fine, but it is very culturally different for some people and difficult to manage. Another challenge is absenteeism and churn rate when you hire them yourself. It's not uncommon to have 400% or higher churn annualized for minimum wage folks. So there is a large upfront cost and ongoing cost doing this, and it really does double the complexity versus when you just did the sales yourself before. So if you've done that, the next door option is to go out and get somebody else.
Obviously, that's one of the things we do, and there are other folks too. And if you're going to consider this option, we've got a few things for you that we recommend that you think about. We do think it's very important, and all of our all the folks we've talked to in the business do, that they be U.S. based for a lot of reasons. And one of those is neutral accents, and you're just much more likely to be able to get transfers through and have your customers feel comfortable if they're speaking to somebody from the U.S. They also need to be very tightly managed and have for a couple of reasons. One is for compliance, because remember, lawyers get called too, and you can't have anybody who gets into a discussion that might require a professional license. You can't have anybody who claims to be something that they're not, and you can't. Obviously, they have to be as polite as they can possibly be, especially going back to the relationship with your internal sales force. If the folks that are transferring to you are very polite, you have a much better chance of having your internal people be happy and willing to work the calls. It makes a huge difference. And in fact, one of our biggest clients now is our client because they had somebody else who didn't get along with their agent so well. So what kind of technology they have is obviously important. Can they get to that sub 1 minute response time that we know is so critical? And are they reliable? And that means overall technical reliability with the dozens of individual pieces that we showed you on the previous graph. I'm sure you've all memorized. And also things like, do they have a generator? We went A/B with another warm transfer provider recently, and those guys had 30-minute outages, a couple 30-minute outages within a month. And 30 minutes within a month, that's inconvenient. It's not so bad, but it's worse than it might appear, just because once if you have a successful warm transfer program, it tends to be it very often winds up being a big percentage of all the inbound volume. So one of our clients is over 60% of their inbound volume is these warm transfers. If that stops dead, then it's not just gee, I'm down for 30 minutes on this relatively small cost factor. My entire operation is really disadvantaged for quite a while, and it's a big morale hit. And also, you want to work. We believe in a pay per lead basis. We believe that makes it much easier to figure out what you're paying, whether the ROI makes sense for you. I mean, there's other ways to do it, but very few people have time to delve into other things, and we think that it represents the best possible model for this line of business.
So we've talked about different ways you can do it, things to watch for. Don't stop trying. My journey moment. Don't stop believing. There are so many things you can test when you have a stable platform, and we wanted to share a couple specific examples with you. We have partners who sometimes hold a lead that they've generated from their own site. The reason they do so is they want to see if that consumer will complete the process online and buy online. That way you don't have to pay the operating cost of generating the policy. Well, in this case, the client was holding it for about 15 minutes. That was from the point of time that the consumer gave permission to call There were still more pages on their application to complete, but they waited for about 15 minutes figuring that was the right amount of time before we would dial it. Just recently, we decided to cut that a little over 60% in time and see what would happen. It had an immediate lift of a 22% increase in transfer rate. So that was 22% lift in their staff getting at bats on the customers who were on their own website. Another interesting research we did recently was with LeadID, a company I mentioned earlier. We shared back with our partner's approval all of the dial results we had from that partnership over the past couple of months, and tying it into their data, where they're able to see, how long that consumer was online, when they left, etc. The results were pretty stunning. Transfer rate 500% worse when the consumer's on the form less than a minute. Bad lead rate double when they're on the form for less than a minute. Now that's the negative stuff. On the positive side, when you could see a consumer was online between 5 and 30 minutes, it showed more dedication to the process, had a massive lift in transfer rate against the base of leads. So we really do encourage our partners, or whether you're trying this yourself, get to a point where you can test these types of things and continually work to improve performance and get a good lift.
And part of what we do as a company is analyze data. We're kind of propeller heads, and it's exciting for us. And it's exciting, especially when you find results like on the graph in front of you that show what you should and shouldn't do. So one of the lesson here is we did some analysis on what happens if you just keep dialing a lead. Obviously, when you dial it one time, it's it's going to be you're going to be the cheapest, and you have you're going to reach most people, and then each successive time you try to dial, each successive time you dial, you add costs, and the contact rate and the transfer rate goes down. And what we found is that at about 5 is where the optimal balance is struck for almost everybody. There are folks that we know and are and who have overall successful businesses that nonetheless dial it many times, and we believe that going as far as they do, some of them dial 10 times or more even, winds up actually being cost ineffective. And on this on the particular test that you're seeing the graph of here, when somebody on the 10th dial actually led to a cost of a transfer alone of $90, and there's just hardly any. There's very few businesses, even if you have a very big payback, that can support a transfer cost of $90. So, this is the kind of analysis we do on an ongoing basis, and we share it with our clients to make sure that we are in the sweet spot for their list and for the overall market.
And then just to touch on a couple of the partner companies I'd referenced earlier, I think it's important folks find what's out there in the marketplace that can help them improve, and LeadCloud, Moss, and LeadAmp on helping you get leads in and manage their performance, as we talked about, and then LeadID analyzing the leads as they've been around. So that concludes our presentation, or most of it. I did have a question come in, Andy, about the ease of plug and play. How to, how quick is this? How easy is this for us for this type of program to be executed?
Right. Well, the answer is that it depends, and it depends upon the how much technical complexity is going to be involved. In the lead world, for the most part, you can sign up with Bankrate or something like that, and they'll email you leads immediately, because it's all electronic. In our world, in the warm transfer world, there's humans involved. So if you were going to come to us and say, we need to start handling 30,000 leads a month, there would be some amount of time for us to be ready for that from a human relations HR perspective. And the other thing is being technically ready. So if we are, if you start off with us with an existing integration, for instance, if you're already with LeadCloud, then it can be very quickly. It's not quite like switching turning a light switch for us, but that can be done in a week or something like that. If, on the other hand, you have your own website or separate aggregator integrations, then those things take the time that they take. We're probably everybody on the call is familiar with those sort of things. There's bits and bytes and secret handshakes, and those things, depending, can take several weeks to get done, if not a month or more. And usually, contractual things are pretty darn quick, unless the clients have have a legal staff that isn't responsive or wants or needs very bizarre things. So the answer is, in some cases, if the integrations are already essentially done with something like LeadCloud, it can be very and the lead loads are modest, we can get started very quickly.
Those are good points. I think on a really specific front as well, let's say your shop's open 9 to 9 local time, wherever you may be. The reality is you're probably not optimally staffed right at 9 or at 8 o'clock p.m. You've got a couple of shifts there, so you might have a challenge starting out to take transfers in that first hour or last hour. So we would want to review that with you, or the company you're working with should review that with you, to ensure that you're getting the best opportunity to actually receive the call as it's transferred over. And one more question there, Andy. It was over what time span is it optimal to do the dials? How many days or hours?
Oh, yeah. I'd actually like to answer two questions here, because one of them I think is real interesting. A lot of times in the world of sales, you think of, hey, 2 o'clock in the afternoon is good, or 5 p.m. is good, or 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. is good, or some things like that. In fact, in the world of warm transfers, and we've seen this across dozens of clients for a long time now, the time of day that the lead comes in is the exact time that you ought to call it. And a lead that comes in at 8 a.m. or 2 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whatever it is, they're almost identically equally likely to be reachable and to transfer if you do it real promptly. And it makes sense because the person's at their computer and they just did it. So beyond that, now if you don't reach them, or if they ask you to call them back, it's another thing that you need to have in your repertoire, is to be able to call them back exactly when they said that they wanted to be called back. But if you don't reach them, then when to call back? And there's two rules there. One is that it depends on what happened. If you get a busy signal, then you want to call back within about 10 minutes, for obvious reasons. However, if you get a ring no answer or an answering machine, what we find is that having a rotating 2 to 3 hour window after that is the best way to make sure that you keep after the lead, get the most out of it, and that your subsequent dials, by definition, are going to happen in different day parts and over 2 days. After 2 days, the responses go way down, and other people have reached them multiple times.
Very good. And another quick question on weekends. Are weekends a good time to call people?
Yeah, they are a great time to call people, and typically we do see somewhat higher contact rates on the what we call queued dials. The initial dials are the ones where the lead comes in and you dial it right away. Those are pretty consistent, as I said, no matter when the lead comes in. With the queued dials, it does work better on the weekends, and therefore, weekend calling hours are great. What we find typically is that our clients only have limited sales staff available on those days. So we do make Saturday calling available to some of our clients that have a little more volume and where it can make sense and that they have the staff. And it's a great idea for folks on if you're in that category, then you definitely want to be doing Saturday dials.
All right, very good. Question we had was, how many transfers have we done? And the answer there is over 3 million, well over 3 million. In fact, we should go over 4 million soon. And that the rate of the next million is obviously occurring a lot quicker as our production scales here, and the performance is going up, and more partners come on, and not just more partners, but we've been able to help partners optimize more leads. We're hitting that next million a lot faster than we did in the past, so the growth has been good here. And finally, Andy, the $1 million question, the last question I saw was, how much does it cost me?
Somebody wanted to know?
I know.
I thought this was an entirely academic exercise. Well, the answer there is that it depends on volume. And we have folks that are that have a lot of volume with us, and they can get down to very low levels, very low per lead prices, and correspondingly, I think Bankrate charges $4 a lead to put leads through a warm transfer process. So the prices can go up toward that area, and then they can come down from there based on volume.
Very good, and I did get another question here. Is there any, this is a great question, any data on callbacks when a voicemail was left, and how do I determine the effectiveness of voicemail? We've tested this on many calls, first call, second call, all the calls, and we found if you leave a voicemail on the first dial, you'll get about a 10% bump in performance on direct inbound callbacks to you. So you want to make sure you've set up your numbers properly, just as a quick important aside, that if you have somebody going to call you back directly, that rings through with proper IVR scripting versus a transfer, which you want to ring directly into your call center reps. But you can get a nice 10% bump on that first dial, and really that's the majority of the performance you're going to get out of it. And then
it is about it's about 10%, and that. So just to be clear, it's not 10 points; it's 10%, which is still huge. So if you were running at a 20% transfer rate before you did this, then you would expect to be at something like a 22% net effective rate afterwards. And sometimes clients get spooked about the in this particular scenario because there's a relatively high abandon percentage on these callbacks, and that's not something to worry about. A lot of times when people see that they've been dialed by a number, they just dial it back, and then when they hear what it is, if they haven't, if they did not listen to the message, they didn't hear what it was, and they hear it's what it is, they'll hang up more. So you'll have relatively high abandons, but the net people who stay on and that you get to talk to will give you something like a 10% bump overall. Very worthwhile.
And I think another great question that we get asked all the time, what do you expect the transfer rate to be? If we give you 100 leads, how many are you going to contact, qualify, and transfer? And it's a complicated answer, and it's in the sources. We've seen performance from 8% transfer rates to over 40% transfer rates, and it really does depend. Is it a source that's selling the lead multiple times versus your own website? Is it a little more expensive source that only sells the lead a couple times that you're competing against and have a better at bat? Do you have front-end tools in place like Lead ID or eBureau to scrub out bad data or bad sources? And I think the important thing is you have to put all that in the mix and continually evaluate it. The fact of the matter is your first day of dialing will be a lot better after you've had 10 or 15 days of dialing and you start to see the results and you start to see what's working and what's not working. But you do have to continually evaluate sources and compare it against the cost. I have seen partnerships where a $5 lead performs just as good as a $20 lead. When you have somebody doing all the dialing, they can take all the negativity out of it with the I never requested this, I didn't really want a quote, put that on the shoulders of people who frankly, that's not their job to sell. And then the salespeople just get the good at bats. And on a cheaper lead, they can still be as effective as long as there is the right transfer rate.
Yeah, and one of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier, I want to highlight. Sometimes the leads sometimes the warm transfers are going to have a higher conversion rate for your salespeople than what they're doing otherwise, and sometimes it's going to be lower. And you want to, as Aaron mentioned, you want to adjust the incentive plan to reflect that. Because if it happens to be lower, then they're going to figure that out pretty quick, and they're not going to want to take these calls, even though for you as a business they make great money. For them as a salesperson, it's a disadvantage. So it's key. You don't have utils in your sales department. You've got human beings that are smart, and you want to make sure that the whole plan is optimized around what they are seeing and what they want and what's going to make them want to take the calls and convert them.
That's right. I ran an insurance sales operation at one time in my past life, and when we started buying aggregator leads, we actually had to pay double the bonus to the reps working them. Otherwise, they didn't want to take the lead or answer the phone because that next inbound phone had a 5 times better chance of closing. They're smart. They know what's going to close and what's not. So we had to change the incentive plan to get the within our cost of acquisition so that they would focus on those leads and give them their full 100% at bat. And then I think we're getting pretty late here. Appreciate everyone joining us for this long. I had one last question: are we attending LeadsCon? And the answer is yes. We'll be there next week. So hopefully get a chance to see those of you who will be there and chat with you there.
All right, and thanks again to everybody for being here, and we're obviously happy to chat with you individually if you have further questions or want to explore anything further.
Yeah, thank you very much, and stay tuned. Our new revamped Warm Transfer website, as you can see here, is coming out in the next few days, so we'll let everyone know when that's ready for your review. And again, we really appreciate your time today. Have a great day.